Well, Matt, welcome. We're grateful that you're able to join us here. Where are you
Amazing.
calling in from today?
Thanks for having me. I am calling in from Bend, Oregon.
Very good.
Can
Very
everybody
good.
see that okay? Did that work?
Yes. Yep. We can see it. Let's run with it.
Okay. So yes, I'm in Bend, Oregon. As Jared mentioned, I'm a business coach. And this is actually perfect follow up with what Steve was talking about. What does it mean that I'm a business coach? At the end of the day, my business focuses on helping organizations build a repeatable process. He was talking about the importance of building repeatable businesses. That's exactly what I do. I don't work specifically with farms or ranches. I have worked with ranchers in the past. I work in every industry all over the world. Um, I am not industry specific. I'll have the opportunity to work with a business owner, talk to a business owner, and they will ask me what are my thoughts on an industry expert versus someone like myself who's not in the industry. First things first, I think both of them serve a great purpose. I would never sit here and say that somebody in your specific industry is not going to bring you value. At the same time, the greatest value I bring to the businesses I work with is that I am not in their industry. A lot of businesses I work with, I'm working with the second generation, the third generation. They're really, really good at what they do. They don't need me to come in and tell them how they should do things any better in that industry. What they need help with is getting other people or the next generation to do what they do. So my presentation is called the CEO mindset. Really, whether or not someone's going to respond and say, well, hold on a second, we don't have a CEO, we're never going to have a CEO. This has nothing to do with whether or not you will have a CEO. It has nothing to do with how many people you have in your organization, on your property, in the farm. It's the mindset that needs to exist in every single type of organization. And that CEO mindset focuses on vision, people, and process. So, quick background story. I have been coaching for 12 years. I am a third generation entrepreneur. While I don't do any ranching or farming, my mom's father was a sheep rancher. He still does that. My dad's father had a metal manufacturing company. My parents had a appliance company for 41 years that they bought when they were 18 years old for $1,500, and grew it into something very special. They gave a lot of the credit and success in that business to a business coach that they hired. So when that business started to grow, my mom left that family business. She became a business coach for 25 years. And when I came into my professional career, all I know is small business. Sitting at our dinner table every night, it was either conversations about my dad's company or the businesses my mom was coaching. And so I have the deepest level of respect for anybody who gets up every morning to go produce for themselves. Um, I wake up every morning to do everything in my power to help those people do what they do better. So that's what we're going to talk about now. Let's see here. Okay, so as we're going through this presentation, I want you to consider three questions. And I said, start with these three questions or start with these questions, but never stop asking these questions. And those questions to me are, why must we do what we do? Right? As a business coach, that's probably the most important thing I have to figure out with when working with somebody is why do they have to do what they're doing? What makes them tick? And there is no one answer, but your answer is the right answer. I may work with somebody who has to do what they want to do because they want to make as much money as possible, and that's the right answer for them. And I need to know that that's the button that pushes them. Or I may work with somebody who has to do what they do because it's their family's property and they want to continue it and they want to pass it on, and that's their why. So everybody has their why. It's important for you to know this for yourself, but even more important, as you grow the enterprise, you want to be able to communicate this to everybody who will be a part of this project. They need to understand that why. Number two, do we have the right people in place and are they aligned with our vision? So going back to the beginning, I mentioned vision and people. We will talk more about that. But at all times, every day, never stopping to ask, do we have the right people in place and are they aligned with our vision? And then finally, how can we do what we do better? Okay, a new mindset. So I know something, when I'm working with any business owner, something I run into a lot is people having difficulty with change. People don't want to change, or others don't want them to change, or maybe the older generation doesn't want them to change. This is all based on change. Change is absolutely necessary, but I think it's important to understand that a new mindset or a change in the way we do something, it's not an abandonment of anything. It's not a disrespect to anybody, right? When I'm working with a second or third generation, we might have to completely reimagine how this business is done. And a lot of times we have to look back at the first generation and say, this has nothing to do with you doing it wrong. We are not even in this room or able to have this conversation if you did not do what you did. Everything you did up until this point was correct. And out of respect for that and love for that, we have to make some changes, but we're not abandoning what we did and we're not disrespecting what you did. This may look different. It's probably definitely going to look different, but it's still a continuation of what you started. And this is a conversation that I have to have so often because I work in a lot of family businesses and we are trying to create change while simultaneously telling the first generation, I know this looks completely different than how you ever did it, but you have to understand it's still in continuation of what you were doing. Okay? So the most important things here when I'm working with business owners or we're creating change, the first thing that we talk about is how we relate. In order to get a different outcome, we have to change our relationship to the thing. Our relationship to our businesses, our relationships to our farm or our people or our livestock creates results and outcomes. And in order to get different results and different outcomes, we have to relate to them differently than we ever have before. That could mean mentally, that could mean physically, that could mean changing the way we've done something for a long, long time. But the relationship has to change first in order to see different results. Okay? The second one is you got to go all in. You can't just tiptoe into this. You can't just try it. You got to go all in on building a new relationship to the organization, to the business, in order to get a result you've never seen. 3, it's not a luxury. What's so interesting about what I do, I talk a lot about, I'll talk about it as we go on here, is working on the business and not just in the business. And what's fascinating is that that is truly seen by most business owners as a luxury. When I have time or when I am able to, I will work on the business. But the business itself needs you to work on the business. And that it's not going to organically show up. And if it is not made a priority, it might not be a problem today. It might not be a problem just this generation. It might not be a problem next generation, but there will become a point when the unwillingness to work on the business and not just in it will be its demise. It shows up in all sorts of different ways. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know what the thing will be. But if you keep your head down and you only work in it, that time will run out. And last but not least is mistakes or opportunities, right? The people that I work with, again, when I'm working with multi-generation, it's amazing how, and it comes from the deepest place of care. But the first generation does not want to let the second generation or anyone underneath them make the mistakes they made. And I get it. Why would you make mistakes that I already made? I've been through this. It was long. It was hard. It was horrible. I don't want you to make those mistakes. But again, the only reason we are where we are today, and we're even having this conversation, and the second generation even has the opportunity to be a part of this business or this enterprise, is because of the mistakes you made along the way. They made you who you are. They made this business who it is. We have to change. This goes back to our relationship. We got to change our relationships to mistakes. We have to let people go out there and figure it out for themselves, because it creates opportunity. It's literally what created what we have today. Okay, so the 3 pillars of the CEO mindset, the most important things I think to focus on as a CEO from that place is vision. Give me a reason why. 2, people. It's always the people. And you guys know this. When you look at anything that has been successful, the first thing you're probably naming is the people you worked with and why it was so great working with them. And when you run into things that don't work, or they're clunky, or they fall apart, the first thing you're probably referencing is the people you worked with and why it didn't happen. We'll go more into detail here, but I can't express enough, right? Even from the position I'm in, when I look at the long list of businesses I've worked with over 300 businesses at this point, one-on-one. The best businesses I've ever worked with, I can remember every single person in those organizations that made that possible. And at the bottom of that list, the ones that struggled the most and could never figure it out, I can show you the same, I know specifically the same people that stood in the way for making that happen. And third, process. And I say because it's too important to not get it right. Everything has to be a documented process. We have to know how we do what we do. And when it's a process and it's documented, that's how we're able to improve things. We can look at it and say, we specifically did it this way. Something about this didn't work. Let's recreate the process and let's do it again. And we can also walk away And we can know that somebody else can follow that process. And more importantly, when something doesn't work or a mistake happens, the first thing we can say is, did you follow the process? And mistakes will still happen. But if they followed the process, we can at least identify now what about the process did not work. If they didn't follow the process, we don't even know where to look. Or even worse, if they didn't follow the process and something great happened, we don't know where to look. So again, that CEO mindset, the way we think about our business, whether it's an actual CEO or just an embodiment of the entire business, its vision, its people, and its process. Okay, vision. What's a vision? When I build a vision with a business, we are building a physical vision on paper. And the more specific this vision is, the more opportunity we have at success. Okay, so I like to use the example planning for a trip. And this goes hand in hand with starting with the end in mind. If I was to tell Jared, go pack a bag, we're going on a trip, what goes into that bag has so much to do with what trip we're going on. Are we going on a 2-day trip? Are we going on a 2-month trip? Are we going somewhere that's extremely hot? Are we going somewhere that's extremely cold? Are we traveling in a vehicle where there's more space and I can take more luggage? Are we going by plane and I only have so much room? It's amazing how many people show up every day to work to just be successful. Just as if they were just going on a trip. But what does that mean? Where are we going? Because the more specific we can be about where we're going, the more specific we can be about our intentions and our actions. The more specific we can be about our communication to others about this trip, they can become a part of it. They can make the trip better because they know the specifics of the vision of where we're going. Okay. The other thing, a vision is meant to be flexible. One of the worst things people can do is they create a vision and then they set it aside as if it's a right or wrong answer. It's the same thing like going on a trip. When you go on a road trip, you may know where you're going, you may know how long you're going, and then along the way, you may decide to stop for lunch somewhere that wasn't on your radar. It's the same thing with the business. We may get down the road and gain information that we did not have when we set out on the trip. And we want to be able to pivot and be flexible and say, this still fits in with our vision. We know where we're going. We know what we're creating. And hey, here's this new opportunity that we didn't know. And we're going to add it to what we're doing. Just because we lay out a vision, we don't want to stamp it in concrete. And then last is always checking our gauges. And it's the same thing. I just really like sticking to this idea of a road trip. If you were to go on a road trip and you had no gauges in the car, it would make that very, very difficult. Right? Is it doable? Could we potentially start to figure out, all right, we can travel about 3 hours and probably need some gas at some point. If we kind of go the same speed or with these cars around us, we're probably going to be okay and not get a ticket. If the car isn't smoking, we're probably okay. But by using our gauges, we can maximize that trip. And we can assure that we won't get a ticket. And we can assure that the car is safe. And we know when to refuel. right? Those gauges are the indicators we need to create in our business. When we identify our vision, we need to create gauges that say, this is what tells us we are in alignment with our vision. This is what tells us we're going to be okay. These are the key indicators that tell us if we stay in alignment with these, we will go where we plan to go. Next. Oh, people. People first. I am, again, the most passionate about people. As I said originally, people make or break your business. And at the core of it is values. When I'm working with any company of any size, our hiring process is to go find people that share our values. Because the values steer all of our decision making. Every single decision you've ever made in your business, on your farm, has come from your values. Now, we as individuals, we don't stop and say, I'm making this decision because of this value, but that is where it comes from. Now, as a business starts to grow and more people get involved, the biggest issue that happens is that you're unable to touch everything like you were originally. And when you're unable to touch everything, decisions start to get made outside of your values or without your values. And so at the end of the day, we need to know that everybody on my team shares my values. And they may not do something the exact way I would do it. They probably won't do it the exact way I do it, but it's going to be on the same page as to how I would do it. Because they value what I value. You don't find yourselves in those situations where you feel like you're going to freak out and say, how did you possibly think that's what you should have done? But that happens because you hire people that value different things. Right? This is a group of people that shares the values of regenerative farming. That's a shared value. Decisions are made with that at its core. If you hired somebody that doesn't share this value, they're going to make decisions outside of it. 2, trust. You got to give people around you trust. The reason you have to give people trust is that trust equals speed. Trust is the number one thing in business that either speeds things up or slows things down. When you trust somebody, things get done faster. When you don't trust somebody, they don't get done faster. Okay? The next is autonomy. People want autonomy. People want to be given responsibility. They want to feel important. And when people have autonomy, that goes back to trust. They want to do right by you. More times than not, when people have the autonomy to do something, they will give more, they will work harder because they realize and understand what you've given them. And finally, communication. I have said this in the very beginning. With every great business I've ever worked with, the number one thing they all share is the highest level of communication. It's not that they don't run into less problems. It's not that the unexpected doesn't happen. They run into every same issue in their businesses. and they do an incredible job of communication. They communicate ahead of things, they communicate after things, they're available. Communication is truly the core of successful business and working with people. Lastly, process. I came across this quote and it's funny. It says, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And I kind of laughed at that because that is not my experience with entrepreneurs. And I know it's definitely not with this group of people either. I think that's false. I think the biggest problem is that you actually can do everything. And you will try at all costs to do everything. So we need to acknowledge that and own that. The biggest issue is that I do know how to do everything. And while that is a blessing and it has served so much and continues to serve so much, if you continue to do everything, it makes no space for anybody. And as Steve was saying, it's impossible to make a repeatable business that is dependent on one individual who does everything. So what is process? When I'm working with companies to develop process, what we're really doing is defining the way we do it here from top to bottom. And this is where people talk about micromanagement or it's always has to be his way or her way. Yeah, no, it does need to be your way. It does need to be his way or her way. That is why we have this. But what we don't want is to always have to go to you to hear your way. We need you to document your way. That way others can do it your way. And we can train your way and we can improve your way. Your way is not the problem. The only reason it's a problem is when you're the only one who knows that way. Okay? Process. It allows consistency. It's the only thing that allows consistency. To do the same thing over and over again, it's got to be done in process. Okay? Again, scale. Scalability is 100% dependent on process. Right? Steve was talking about a franchise business. A lot of the businesses I work with have no desire to ever franchise, have no desire to ever open another location. But we still want to build a business that could do that. Right? That is the definition of a great business, like Steve was saying. If you can repeat it, it doesn't mean you have to repeat it. It has nothing to do with that. I meet a lot of people that say, well, I don't have a desire to ever have another location. That's fine. We don't need another location, but we need to build out the business as if we were going to have 100 more locations. Because then we know how we know exactly how we do what we do. And then at the end, structures freedom. This is another thing as well, right? A lot of people, entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurs or you're ranchers because you don't want to work inside of a structure. You want the freedom. And so rules and processes, it goes against who we are. But it's the opposite. It truly creates freedom. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to think about these things over and over that we do every day. We don't need to train them over and over. We need to document them and hand them off to someone else. Okay, so how do we do this? The most important thing is creating space. Okay, you gotta create space between yourself and the business. Okay, again, mentally, physically. For some people, it's literally physically creating space. If you going out there means you get involved, you can't go out there. You know yourself. Okay? Creating space is also time. You have to create time for this. You have to be intentional about this. Again, this is back to the all in. This is not going to organically show up. You all know better than me how long your to-do list is. There is not a day when that to-do list is blank and you can say, oh, I have nothing to do. Maybe I should work on the business. Maybe I should work on my vision. That time finally came. That time will not come. You have to create the space for it. Okay? Again, this is the idea of the on the business and not in it. Right? A lot of people go to think that building a business is working in that business. Right? The idea always of a business was to build a machine that is able to create the outcome or the result we are looking for. Not for you to go to work in it every day to say this machine, this way of doing it, this A to Z documented process, you can go take this anywhere and this machine creates the result of what we do here every day. That is your job as a business owner, is to develop that machine just as much as working in that machine. Okay? I said here, they need the how, not the what. Okay? And what I mean by that, people, second generation, third generation, whatever you want to call that, as you know, that what changes, what you're doing. I heard Jared talking earlier about what his grandfather was doing, and then they sat down with his dad and they had to change the what of what they did. That what has the potential of changing many more times through the life of this business. The what is not the important part. The how they were able to create change. That's the important part, to say, this is what we do today. We don't know if this is what we will be doing tomorrow, but we know how to do whatever it is that shows up tomorrow. That's what you want to pass on to your people. That's what you want to pass on to your kids. They need the how of building and running a business, not the what to do. Okay? Get uncomfortable. For all of you, because I know this with other business owners I work with, the hard work that you do every day, the insane amount of hours, the backbreaking, I know that's unbelievably hard, and it's what's easy for you. What's hard for you is sitting down at a desk for an hour. What's hard for you is working on a vision. That is as hard as the manual labor you do or what you do every day with your hands for most people.
Amen.
So it's about getting uncomfortable. Go do the thing that is physically easy and unbelievably hard to do. Okay, so I don't run out of time here.
Yeah,
Put together.
we're
All
good.
right,
We'll wrap it up here pretty quick, and then we're gonna jump into our bonus session. But this is great.
Okay, so the most important thing now for each of you at this point is understanding your time, where your time goes, and what you're focusing on. I've created two different tools for you to get clear on what that is. One is just simply what I would call a weekly CEO time audit. When I work with any business owner in any industry, I ask them to walk around with a pad and document everything they do. because we want to not only understand what they do, but if they need to do it and what they would need to do to pass that off. Right? Most people, while you know what you do every day, you would be shocked when you see it on paper because everybody always is. And you can always find things on that list that when we get honest with ourselves, we really shouldn't be doing it. Okay. And the other one is a vision execution gap worksheet. So I have put specifics in here in regards to how to get this from me. I will email it to anybody. I am here to help however I can. For any business out there, I always when I meet somebody, the first thing I offer is just a free coaching session. If you want to reach out and have a conversation about what's going on in your organization, I'm always open to have that conversation. We can either go through the worksheets and I can get you set up with that, or we can have a completely different conversation. But please don't hesitate to reach out. I will email those to everybody. And if you want to have a more in-depth conversation as well, I'm more than open to have that conversation too. So you can reach me at matt@mattwill.com. My phone number is 707-484-5255. I hope that was helpful. And if there's anything I can do to help in any way, again, this is my passion. I have the world of respect for every single one of you. While I don't do what you do every day, I know this work can provide assistance and be helpful, and I'm here to help however I can.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I've got some good comments in the chat here. So I appreciate that you brought this up. This perspective from somebody outside the business helps as a second witness when we coach and we say, hey, you need to step away from the day-to-day to be able to get the big picture. And so, yeah, we really appreciate that. So Margot put in the chat the way to be able to contact you. And that's great. I'd absolutely say take advantage of the free gift, the opportunity to be able to connect with Matt. So Matt, if there's anything in the chat you want to respond to directly, you can do that.